Hello, my name is Maribeth Boeke Ganzell, and I am a batik artist, and I'd love to welcome you to my home. This is where I work. I work on my kitchen table, much to my family's chagrin, but it has nice light, and it's just a wonderful place to still be involved with the family and be able to do my art. My medium for art is photography and also batik. And today I'd love to show you how to do some batik and show you some of my batik artwork. I learned in the Gambia about 8 years ago. I went with my family through St. Mary's College. We were part of the peace program with St. Mary's College, and we lived in the Gambia for a year. And I met a gentleman, his name is Boeke. Babu is what he goes by. And I took a workshop with him. I took a class, and I fell in love with batik, loved it. And then I took another class, and after the second class, Babu said, "Hey, you're ready, why don't you do an internship with me?" And so for the rest of the year that I lived in the Gambia, I got to work with Boeke and just share batik ideas and learn from a master. So that was what has inspired me to be a batik artist. So the type of batik that I use is a style that I learned from Boeke in the Gambia, and it's a West African style. They use kentings, which is a stick with copper wire wrapped around it, versus the traditional Indonesian style tool. And the hot wax is applied to the cloth, and instead of painting on the colors in West Africa, they do tub dyes. And so I'm going to take you through the steps, the process. So the batik starts off with a drawing, and as I mentioned before, a lot of my drawings are inspired by photographs. So this started off as a photograph, and then I drew it. And so from the pencil drawing, which gets washed off in the process, you go ahead and you wax it. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of the waxing. You take your genting and dip it in the hot wax. The wax is a combination of beeswax and paraffin. And shake off all the excess wax. And then you just draw a slow, steady line to get the wax to penetrate the cotton, and you want it to be able to go all the way through. And then after you put on one layer, you need to put a second layer on the front, and then you always go back and put another layer on the back as well. And so that's why the waxing can take so long, because everything you put wax on, you have to put 2 layers on the front and 1 layer on the back. You have to make sure you shake it out really, really well and take your time. One of the things I learned from Boeke, my teacher, was to just take it slowly and to be patient. Ndanka is the word for, which means slowly, slowly. So when I teach classes, I always tell my students to summon their inner turtle, and just to take it really slowly. It's a great art for folks that just need to relax and try to slow down a little. Because as soon as you try to rush things, then you'll make a mistake. And with the wax, you can't take it off. So once the wax goes on, it's there permanently. And if you have to make a mistake, then you just try to make something out of that. Maybe that drip that went on, you try to make something else out of it. But ndanka, slowly, slowly. Just take your time. Find a little inner peace. So this edge here, I want to be really white, and so I'm going to make sure that I put two layers on the front. If I want it to end up kind of gray, I'll just put one layer of wax on it. So you can use both the genting and then also a brush. So in a little bit I'll paint the wax on with the brush. This edge here is going to be the surf coming up on the beach. And so I want it to be very white. So I'm going slowly to make sure I get a lot of wax on it. When I'm using the wax, I change my angles sometimes because I see how the wax is coming out of the stylus, and maybe I'm not happy with how it's flowing out, and so I'll change my angle to change the way the wax is coming out. Also, just like an artist would be drawing with a pencil, they're going to change the way they're moving their hand, and so to get the different angles of the wax drawing, I change my hand as well. I like my pieces to be very flowy and not as precise, and so that is usually how I find myself drawing with the wax. So you can also use brushes to apply the wax, and it's a little bit more of a short stroke, but if you have bigger areas that you want to cover, or if you just want to have like a different look to it, you can use the brush. A lot of my art starts off as a photograph, and a couple summers ago we were up in Cape Cod. My daughter was working at a biolab up there doing an internship, and we went to the National Seashore, and there was this really crazy stormy day, and we wanted to go find some sharks. So we went to the beach, and I did some photography there, and so I take the photograph and I put it on a watercolor app program, and use that watercolor app program to help me get it drawn onto the fabric. And so I just did a printout of a black and white printout of what I had on the app. So this edge here is going to be the surf coming in, and I want that to be really white, so I'm going to do a couple layers for that so that none of the other dyes come through. tub dye, and everything will turn blue. And then I'm going to paint on some darker blue because I'm not going to be able to do tub dyes for that. And everything I went to save blue, which is going to be the sky. The next step will be to wax over the sky, and from there I'm going to dip it into yellow, which is going to turn everything that I left blue green. So I want this little slip of water here to be green, and after that I'll wax the green here, and I'll wax the green at the top of the cliffs, and to save that. And then the next dip I'm going to put it in is red, which everything that was green is going to mix with the red, and that's going to make it brown. So most of this is going to be like whites here with some brown flecks mixed into the water and the sand. The sky is going to be blue. And then at the very end, after I wax everything that I want to keep brown, I'm going to put it in a black bath. And that'll give it and I'll crinkle it beforehand, and that'll give it the traditional batik spider web look. But I'm also going to leave some areas where there won't be any wax, and then those areas will be black. And so you have to, it's almost like painting backwards. You go from light to dark, so everything you want to be light, you put on first, and then you go all the way to black with your dark colors. And I usually have to write it out so I remember what I'm doing, because once you put your wax down, there's no going back. You can't change it. And I really love doing the tub dyes more so than just painting on the colors, because when you're doing the tub dyes, the wax can seep underneath or the dye can seep underneath the wax and combine with some of the other colors, and you get all these little happy mistakes, and it gives it a more interesting, deeper look to it. And you never know what it's going to look like until the very end when you boil all the wax off. You can never tell, because it just gets all this wax piled on top. And it's like when you put it in the pot of boiling water, it's like opening up a big Christmas present, because you never know what it's going to look like until the end, and then it's a big gift. So I have a piece that I was working on that is ready to go into a yellow dye, so I'm going to show you how to make the yellow dye bath. On this one, the whole thing is going to turn yellow, except where I painted blue is going to turn green. And then some areas I wanted to keep the blue, so I went ahead and put the wax on that. So I'll put it in water, let it get wet while I make up the dye. I start with a fiber reactive dye, a Procyon, and what it does is chemically reacts with the cotton fibers and actually becomes permanent with the fiber. There's a chemical reaction where you won't lose the color at all, because it's actually embedded into the cotton fibers. So these colors will stay, they won't wash out. And so I start off with the powder and mix in a little bit of chemical water, which is urea, it's nitrogen, and the powder, and paste it up to a consistency like peanut butter. If you just add the dye to the water, you'll get little speckles and uneven dyeing, so you want to get a good paste first. And then once you have your good paste, then you just slowly add the chemical water. I love teaching this at middle schools and high schools, because the whole process has some nice science to it. It has some nice chemistry. So I love to teach the kids a little bit of science and chemistry at the same time. All right. So once you get the yellow paste mixed in, I'm going to add salt to the water. And what the salt does is it helps the dye penetrate the fabric. So the dye is going to go into the water, and we want the dye particles to get into the cotton fiber. And so the salt helps to do that. It helps to push it in. And then the dye. And the rest of the water. And then the last thing I'm adding is soda ash, and this is the fixative. So the urea helps the powder go from powder form to liquid form, and then it goes into the dye bath. The salt helps to push the pigment into the cotton, and then the soda ash helps it stay in there, helps it become permanent. So this is your fixative. And you can see a nice little chemical reaction here with this one. The water actually gets warmer and turns into a deeper yellow color. And then I'm going to take our paste. So we'll leave this in for 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes the white is going to turn a really nice yellow color, and the blue should turn green. I'll let that dry, and then I'll go on to the next step where I'll wax over all the colors that I want to keep blue and yellow and green, and then we'll put it in a red bath next. So I've always felt like I've been an artist at heart. Like my whole life I've been building things. I built the screen here for our deck, or I've always dabbled in watercolor. But my first love was in photography, and I started that in high school and was part of my yearbook. But I never believed I was an artist. And when I moved to Southern Maryland about 16 years ago, I met Carrie Patterson and Angie Wathen, two local artists, and they really made me believe that I was an artist, even though I didn't believe it myself. They're like, "You are an artist. Look at your photography." And so I brought out some of my photography outside for you guys to see. These are some pieces from the Gambia. The light there in West Africa is beautiful, and I just really loved doing photography there. And when I came back, I was trying to process my life there and my life here, and so I wrote an essay about living in the Gambia, and I combined it with my photography, and had my first show at the Yellow Door in Leonardtown with Carrie Patterson, and combined my words with my photography. So I wanted to share a few of those pieces with you. So this one here, we were taking the ferry across from Banjul over to the northern side of the Gambia, and the ferry ride is always a lot of adventure and excitement. You really want to try to get on fast because this is the crowd that comes on afterwards. And so we got onto the ferry pretty quickly, went up to the second balcony, and I looked down and I just saw all these people boarding the ferry, carrying all of their products that they want to sell across the shore, on their heads, carrying babies at the same time. It's a wonderful sight to see. This one here is the beach near our house in Brufit, and near a place called Ganzell. And the fishermen would catch the fish, bring them in, and lay them out as far as the eye could see, these small fish, and they would salt them and dry them. And so that's what this photo is. And this other one is my daughter Kaya when she was young. Our whole family lived in the Gambia together, and the people there in the Gambia are just wonderful and friendly, and she quickly made friends. And this one is really special to me because just showing her friendship with another young girl there in the Gambia, and they were jump roping together just out in the field. And now I'll share a little bit of my batik with you. I tend to do a lot of my batiks from photographs that I've taken, and then I do a little bit of processing on the computer and make another image and look at that image and go ahead and put it onto a batik. So a lot of my pieces are originally from photographs that I've taken. And I also love trees. Ever since I was a little child, my grandfather had a tree farm, and so I've always spent a lot of time in trees or on trees or cutting down trees. So I really have an affinity for trees, and as you can see, that carries over into my batiks. These two pieces here are Ginkgo leaves. When you're at historic St. Mary's City, they have large, fabulous ginkgo trees, and in the fall they turn wonderful yellow colors. So that's what inspired me on these two pieces. This one is from a photograph when we were in Colorado and going up through the mountains and looking at some of the aspen trees. And this one here, I'm inspired by the small little slips of land here in southern Maryland that come out into the water. So when you look across the St. Mary's River, or when you look across the Potomac, you see these little slips of land. And so this one here is St. George's Island at sunset. And then this one here, I just was inspired by, once again, like thinking about my grandfather's Christmas tree farm, and they had white pines there, and they're just these white, tall white pine trees there. So that's what inspired that one. While living in the Gambia, I also discovered the wood stamps, and I would see them in the markets and see some of the cloth that was made with the wood stamps. It's another type of batik, and I fell in love with the wood artists and the pieces that they would make. And so using the stamps, we stamp it on the cloth and dip it in the dye bath again, and then stamp it to get another color. Sometimes we'll use different stamps combination together and dip it in the dye bath, and it makes these really beautiful pieces of cloth. And I like to do tablecloths and napkins, and they're just really fun. I have friends come over sometimes and we just play with the stamps and put them in different patterns. It's something we really enjoy doing. And so this piece is a Indonesian stamp, and batik started in Indonesia, and it was actually found also in some of the Egyptian periods, so it's a very, very ancient art. From Indonesia, it traveled up into Europe, and then the Europeans brought it back down into Africa. And the styles are all very different. In Indonesia, they tend to use silk, and they paint on their dyes, and they use a different stylus. In West Africa, where I learned, it's more of a traditional tub dye, and they use this tool here, which is the stick with the copper wire. In West Africa, I found that they like to reuse everything they can. So maybe an old extension cord, you take the copper out, and they would use that, and then just find a stick off of a tree. So that's some of the history behind batik. I feel like I've always worked in wax. From a small child visiting my grandparents in Ohio, I would make Lithuanian Easter eggs with my grandmother. It's tradition in Lithuania to make Easter eggs with wax and with dyes. And I never knew then that it was building me up to become a batik artist later in life. But I think that's what really drew me to batik, is just my whole life I've been working on these Easter eggs with my grandmother. So to finish it off, we're going to need to boil it to get all the wax off. This was the shirt that we had put in the light blue dye earlier, and so I'm going to put it in a pot of boiling water, give it a good stir. Use that driftwood again. And then when you pull it out, give it a roast rinse. Then you have your design. This one turned out a little bit too late, so I think I'm going to re-dye it again. I'll re-wax it and re-dye it just to make it a little bit darker. But I think Two Hens is really going to like it. When you're done, you have to hang it to dry. And then after it dries, throw it in the clothes washer, and it'll be good to go. And you have a finished piece. If you'd like to learn more, you can follow me on Facebook. Look for MB's Batiks. You can also look for me on my Etsy page. If you just put in MB's Boutiques, you can find me there. During non-COVID times, I like to sell my work at Two Hens and then also at St. Innie's. Thank you for stopping by my home and taking a look at my work. I was really happy to share my boutique passion with you and share a little bit about my experiences in West Africa. And I'd especially like to thank the town of Leonardtown and the St. Mary's County Arts Council for all the work they do to support the artists in the area. Thank you.